Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate. Today I finally have a review for you after like a few months of The Bonehunters. This is the sixth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It follows the 14th Army and sort of the trials and tribulations that they go through. And we see a few similar and familiar faces, such as Karsa Orlong, Gainos Perrin, Troll, and Onrak, and just so many other recurring characters, as well as meeting a few new faces. I just want to go over my general thoughts around the book first, with some non-spoilers around the themes and characters and stuff like that, and then moving on to spoilers later on. So just quick on the themes. There's, some themes of memory and sacrifice, but they also kind of go back to the larger theme of faith. Faith in, the empire, their purpose, the rebellion, and, sort of these other movements or institutions that exist in this world that's really tested for these characters throughout the book, I would say. It's definitely harder to find these themes. It's not as direct sometimes. Faith definitely is, but I think memory and sacrifice are a bit hidden. And it's not like in the other books, like the third book, where compassion is essentially yelled at you throughout the second half of the book. So those are definitely harder to find, but I would say overall they were very interesting themes, and I think they were well done when thinking about it. The character work was pretty well done for the most part, I would say. The duos were interesting, such as Karsa and Samar Dev. We got to see Troll and Unrak again eventually in the second half of the book more. There were some characters for me that I didn't really attach to too much. That isn't to say that hasn't happened in the last few books, but I think they were bigger parts of this book that I didn't really care for. But overall, I liked the new POVs, such as Absalar and a few other important characters I'll get into later. Yeah, I think the character work was good. It's just sometimes some characters fell by the wayside for me. Just in terms of the plot and what happened, I think there was some really high highs, like the siege of Yucatan, or however you pronounce that. Ganos Perrin doing his thing. I won't get into that until later. And just frankly, Karsa Orlong being Karsa Orlong. I love him, his character, or rather, I find him very compelling. He's just such an interesting character. Yeah, I think just what they did and how they interacted with the story, I really liked. There was some definitely highs of this book, but I would say a lot of it was kind of middling for me, just in terms of Malazan, not in general. I still think it's better than some other books that I've read, but just in terms of what I've expected from the book, it didn't really meet those expectations. But let me back up and just say, overall, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was a great book. I think there was a lot set up for the next book, Reaper's Gale. I just feel like this book was trying to find its place. And I think perhaps that's because a lot of the characters and sort of the plot was trying to find its place. And I think that was intentional versus, a slight on the writing or something like that. Yeah, I just think it's kind of following up from books 3 through 5, and those were sort of such momentous books that it's kind of hard to find your place right away. And I think there's a lot of setup in this book for the next few books, and I'm really looking forward to Reaper's Gale, especially. So I know it's a lot of people's favorites in the series. It wasn't mine personally. It doesn't mean I didn't like it. I enjoyed it. But, maybe it'll rank higher on a reread one day. But I would say it's about, of the 6 so far, it's probably 5 out of 6. And I rated it about a 4 to 4.25 or so. Again, I need to stop rating books, I think, and just say I like them or I don't. So again, it's not my favorite, but that's okay. I liked it. It was good. So now on to some spoilers. What is Malazan Book of the Fallen without Karsa Orlong? I really loved his interactions with Samar Dev, kind of this barbarianism, essentially barbarian savagery or something, versus civilization with Samar Dev. They really balanced each other out, I think. They were kind of both the extreme ends, you could say, of both in some ways. You know, I think Karsa brought up some good points in regards to, you know, the futility or the sometimes the uselessness of civilization, sort of the, you know, these are just made up things that don't really matter. You know, what's their purpose besides to make our lives, you know, easier, but in some ways they're also, it makes it harder because you're reliant on all these other aspects of life. So I think they balance each other out super well. I do think Karsa is someone who's now, you know, set in his ways, but at least has realized his own faults and addresses them. There were a few interactions with Samar where he talks about sort of how his culture and upbringing perhaps was wrong and wasn't justified for what he did. And I think he's starting to realize that his actions hurt people. And, you know, I think in some ways he doesn't address them overall. But yeah, I just think he's growing a lot as a character. And for someone who's as blunt and sort of pig-headed as him, it's great to see that growth in a character like that, because he's just this big, hulking, massive beast of a man. But he has this sort of like reflective side to him that's starting to come out more. And I think it's just really well done and interesting. And I also, you know, he believes, or rather he hopes that he can help people out, other cultures out, you know, with, I forget the names of the group that he's helping out, but, you know, helping them out against the Tista Eater, as long as they're willing to try, versus kind of coming in as a savior. He wants people to sort of take their own agency around it all, because he doesn't want to be the only one, even though I don't think he would mind being the only one to enact violence for the better good. Yeah, I just think he's just an interesting character and a fascinating character. Now, to touch on Anrak, who, you know, we haven't seen since book 4, I think he's a Talanai Mass who feels anger and emotion around the suffering of others versus the suffering and the pain of himself or of his own people. In book 3 with the Talanai Mass, you know, we kind of have that big moment with was it Ikovian or something, where, you know, he sacrifices himself for the Talanai Mass to sort of relieve their own grief. Again, that's fine and justified, but I also think it's interesting to see someone who's gone through so much pain and suffering himself that he is more upset about others' pain and suffering, especially in a direct way with the children in that scene where they're defending the Shadow Throne or the Empty Throne, you know, and these children have died by scores defending it, and he just feels so upset about it. And I just think, coming from a race that has been portrayed kind of middling, I would say, in terms of the balance of good and evil, I think that's being generous. I just think sort of seeing him portray those emotions was just really interesting, and I really enjoyed seeing those moments with him, especially around the theme of sacrifice, with the children and himself, and eventually coming up against Ikarian. I just think that was a really tragic and compelling way to see the Talanai Mass and Anrak. And of course, there was the 100-page siege of Ygatan, with the theme of, you know, rebirth, with the Bonehunters and Fiddler and all those characters going through, just trying to escape being burned alive, essentially, in the city, which is just crazy. I just, that was Leomin trying to burn down the city, just to kill the Malazans as a spite, was just, that was such a crazy read. I didn't set that book down, I think, when I was reading that. The rebirth of the 14th Army kind of into the Bonehunters was just interesting to read. And it was a very tense situation, and I felt claustrophobic at times as they were digging through these tunnels. The scene where, what was the name? I forget his name at the moment, but Bottle, feeling the spiders as they were hungry and started crawling all over him. I had to skip that. I could not read that. And you just really felt the claustrophobia throughout the entire siege as, people were being burned alive in their armor. That was just an intense scene. Ganos Perrin, that was I loved reading his parts. He has just turned into such a badass and very assured of himself. I think he's grown a lot in the last few books. In the first book, you kind of have this unsure, almost uncaring character who doesn't believe that he deserves what he has, but just throughout the last few books, he's kind of just thrown into these situations, and I think he's grown a ton as a character, and I really can't wait to read more of him. I think him being the master of the deck and then, killing a god essentially was just like, that was awesome. Yeah, I just love reading his parts now, and I think at first I didn't, but now I'm really interested and invested in his character. Now onto the theme of memory. Fiddler especially playing that song in Malaz City to his fellow soldiers, reminiscing and remembering the names of the fallen, the soldiers who have died in the last few books and before. That's something I really appreciate about the series, is that it can really show this softer side to what is a military fantasy, but I think there's a lot of heartfelt moments like this where it's maybe not as direct in terms of like grief, but you really can see the grief of these characters who, in certain situations you're probably thinking like, oh, they should be out there helping their friends. Friends are dying out there right now in Malaz City, like with Kalam, Fiddler's friend and fellow soldier. But, is it wrong for a soldier who's a human being to grieve and to finally have those moments of grief? I think they're very reflective in this book, and that's something I just appreciated a lot. Just allowing people to be people and sort of experience that grief is I just really like that. So Cotillion was kind of an unexpected good guy. I think finally seeing his point of view in this book a little bit more and interacting with him more, I really liked it. He's, I think, somebody who cares about the actions that are taking place in order to achieve the goal, or rather the consequences and the cost of the goal, like sacrifice, for example. I think he's doing his best to balance out like action versus inaction, and I think he's trying to balance out with Shadowthrone. You can see he's somebody who cares, but he's also knows that there is a greater good, potentially, as far as I know, at cost. And he's clearly trying to fight an evil that's really hard to beat. But I think he's trying to have these moments of compassion with some of these characters, and you can really see that come through, and it's something I appreciate about his character. I think reading more of him in the future will be really, really cool, and I just can't wait to read more of him. And then just kind of quick fire some POVs. Apsalar, I love seeing her point of view. You don't get much of her in the first few books, but it was great to see more of her. Haboric, what the fuck was going on with Habork. I have no idea. I mean, the ending of him was cool, kind of becoming the strength for Treach. I don't know. And then, Mappo and Karium, I have no idea. I just need to reread their points of view, their, chapters in Deadhouse Gates, and in this book, because I don't fully understand the scope of it all, but I think seeing Akarium at the end sort of becoming what he's supposed to, that was just really that was scary in a way, just seeing the power that this character has, I think was really interesting. I didn't care much for Hellion. That wasn't because I think she was, not interesting, being a drunk soldier who's scared of spiders, which I thought was pretty funny in premise, but I just didn't attach myself too much to her and her moments, because she was pretty just drunk all the time or looking for alcohol. And, I think at the end when in the last city, when she has that interaction, I forget with who, I thought that was pretty funny, but overall, she just kind of slowed down the book for me. There were also just overall, again, to kind of reiterate, I just felt like I was kind of floating along throughout this book. I think the highs were very high, but I think throughout the rest of the book, it was just kind of not flat for me, but almost flat, just a little bumpy, in a good way. There was also just a lot in this book that I think was unexplored, but I know that's just kind of the case with a lot of these books. I don't want to ramble on for too long, but I just want to reiterate that I enjoyed this book. Again, it's not my favorite in the series, but I am looking forward to the setup of Karsa, Karium, and Rulad. That's going to be some crazy, crazy shit going on, and a lot of interesting personalities interacting with one another. In book 7, I'm guessing that's what's going to happen. It's going to be crazy. I'm interested to see how the Bonehunters kind of, now that they're on their own, separated from the Malazan Empire, I'm interested to see how they kind of navigate this whole situation. It's a very, dynamic situation now, and I thought it was cool that they were with the Gray Swords. That just kind of appeared out of nowhere. I'm interested to see what happens. I know I missed a lot, but there was a lot going on, so please don't get upset in the comments down below. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really can't wait to get to book 7. I plan to start that around Thanksgiving, so the next week or two. I'm just finishing up some other stuff right now. Just let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a comment if you want. Make sure to like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I will talk to you soon.